Hello, and welcome to my TED Talk. Today I'll be discussing the use of a predominantly vegetarian diet in athletes. To do this, I'm going to use a specific example, one dating back to the 2nd or 3rd BC. These are gladiators. Due to the sodium levels and mineral densities, we can determine that these gladiators were predominantly vegetarian. Along with the stable isotope readings, the bone mineral density also suggests a high level of training and impeccable recovery. What is also extraordinary is that these gladiators were vegetarians before being vegetarian was even cool. So what is up with the meat-eating, carnivorous diet of modern human? A lot of these cultural norms and misconceptions can be led to just that, misconceptions within our cultural norms. Starting off with energy, we can tie the misconception of muscular activity and what sustains it back to the 1800s with German chemist Justus von Liebig, whom hypothesized that muscular activity was supported by animal protein. That hypothesis long since been debunked. We now know that our main source of muscular activity in terms of endurance exercise is glycogen stored in our muscles, which together form chains of glucose, which then eventually gets burned into ATP, producing energy for our individual cells. This glucose in the form of glycogen is derived from any calories, whether that be protein calories or carbohydrate calories. The real difference comes in the yielding of the glycogen from each calorie source. When substituting carbohydrate calories for protein calories, you're sacrificing not only protein quality and protein levels. To illustrate the difference between protein and carbohydrate calories, 1 cup of cooked lentils equaling the same protein amount as 3 ounces of meat, providing the same amount as protein while still providing energy-producing carbohydrates. Protein quality contributes as much, if not more, to the misconceptions as energy. Protein quality being of the highest debate, arguing whether or not plants are a complete source of protein. The completeness of a protein speaks on the amount of amino acids that it has. There are 7 amino acids our body cannot produce. Those are the 7 essential amino acids. And the completeness just says how many of those 7 amino acids does this food have. Plants, in fact, are the only food source which have all 7 amino acids in varying proportions, whereas in animal proteins, we do not see all 7 amino acids. All 7 essential amino acids. Not only are plant foods a complete source of protein, but the packaging also is a lot more favoring. Animal proteins carry with it unsavory molecules. Inflammatory molecules such as endotoxins, NEU5GC, heme iron, amongst others, contribute to up to 70% of inflammation in our bodies. A single hamburger being able to increase your TMAO levels and therefore inflammation by 70%. What this translates to is a lot of aches and pains, especially for an athlete. Inflammation to an athlete is the game killer. Joints, muscles, blood flow are all compromised and recovery is delayed. In plant foods, we see something a lot more favoring. We see our protein being transported in the packaging of phytochemicals, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. In fact, plant foods have up to 64% more antioxidants than meat. What does this mean for an athlete? Well, it means a reinvigorated body. Inflammation is reduced, joints and muscles are not as sore, and recovery is not delayed. Going back to the gladiators, we can imagine the gladiators and what they did, their rigorous training and quite deadly exercise. And we ask ourselves, how were they able to keep up to such a pace? No longer is the image of a meat-eating gladiator. Our own human evolution seems to have some sort of bias towards the consumption of meat. The archaeological record with stone tools used for hunting, butchering, and the such exist in plethora. Neanderthals, though being adaptive hominins, whom were omnivorous, were almost forced to be more meat-centric due to their environmental factors, limiting major fauna and funneling into a diet of meat. But when looking at our own anatomy, we can see that we differ from carnivores far too much for the amount of meat intake that we modern humans live on today. Here we have a carnivore skull and dentition of a Pleistocene carnivore named Homotherum serum. Here we can see their molars and premolars, incisors, and canines, all depicting that of a carnivore. Looking closer at a different carnivore, that of a leopard, we can see similar dentition in terms of the molar, premolar, canine, and incisors, depicting meat shredding teeth, scissor-like, and able to penetrate. These are used to cut and shred meat in comparison to those of modern humans. Here we see a huge difference in molar, premolar, incisors, and canines to depict something much more different than that of a carnivore, but of an omnivorous creature. Our canines are impacting and non-self-honing, which means that through our years, our canines will reduce in size, and our molars are more suited for the gnawing and breaking down of plant fibers rather than to cut and slice meat. Going back to the Neanderthals, whom were the most carnivorous amongst us, we see that they had no choice. They ate meat predominantly because meat was what was afforded to them. Fast forwarding, we see gladiators taking advantage of an optimized diet for their athletic activity. And now we come back to the present day. Having the ability to optimize our diet, I believe we should do so. Not only for the athletes trying to reach the pinnacle of performance, but as everyday humans, understanding that what we eat plays a much bigger role in our physiology, hopefully setting a foundation from which we can build upon. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.